All right, Dean, we are back. Ready to rock and roll, would you say?
I don't have the Elvis. Yes. Is that an Elvis song? Yes.
No.
I agree.
But we're reviewing Elvis, the 2022 biopic hit.
Which was actually the second highest biopic of all time. What was the other musical biopic?
Bohemian Rhapsody.
So that's pretty good. Elvis is still relevant today.
Still the king.
King of rock. Is king of rock and roll or king of rock?
I think we can give them both. Give them both. Rated PG-13, 2 hours, 39 minutes, from the director and also writer on this one, Bahz Luhrmann. We got as composer Elliot Wheeler, and it stars Tom Hanks as Colonel Tom Parker, Austin Butler as Elvis Presley, Olivia de Jonge as Priscilla, Elvis's first wife, and Kelvin Harrison Jr. as B.B. King. Budget was $85 million, and the current worldwide gross is around $286 million. So this seems like it was quite the hit.
That's the current worldwide. Yeah, it's impressive. Yeah, it's all right. I guess it's $286 million. It's pretty good.
So basically, the movie follows the rise and fall of Elvis Presley through the eyes of his manager, Tom Parker.
Which was the way the movie starts off is Tom, who is Tom Hanks. That actually worked out very well. That's probably why they did the casting and made it easier to say, okay, Tom, and he could play in character still. Waking up in the hospital bed and then running around Vegas. It's a bit odd at first, but having it through the manager's eyes was an interesting way to portray it, because you're watching Elvis in his life, but he's not portraying it, which made it popular, because it's like a third-person bio. I guess most biopics are, but you know what I mean, though, where it was telling it outside of him about him. It was well done.
Yeah. Movie was primarily filmed in Queensland, Australia, which started production in January of 2020, or started filming 2020. By March, Tom Hanks, I don't know if you remember this, but Tom Hanks and his wife were some of the first people who had contracted COVID before it kind of had become a thing in the pandemic.
They locked down Australia, is what you're telling me?
I don't know about that.
Tom Hanks, this is what Dave is, or David will call him, because he is making a wild accusation right now. Tom Hanks, breaking news, according to Dave, locked down Australia.
I would say that you could argue that COVID became real once Tom Hanks and his wife had contracted it. Like, I feel like there was that moment where it's like, is this going to be a big deal? Is this not? And then Tom Hanks and his wife get it, and you're like, okay, this is a real thing. This can happen.
Yeah, the good people can get it too. It was when everyone realized we're not invincible. It can get us. In order to transform Tom Hanks into Colonel Tom Parker, he had to sit in makeup for 5 hours. 5 hours of sitting in a chair. I think the longest was Jim Carrey in The Grinch. I don't have that exact timing, but 5 hours. Imagine sitting for 5 hours, someone poking layering your face.
Yeah, it's brutal. That's why, I don't know if you ever saw the older X-Men movies with Rebecca Romaine Stamos as Mystique, and she was all in blue and this bright red hair. Like, she had to have her whole body painted and have on all these prosthetics put on and shit. And you just have to sit there and just not move. It seems.
But it paid off with Hanks, though, because he looked the part. Watching this movie and then going back to what he actually looked like, I was shocked.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot that he wasn't a big-nosed tubby man.
Big fat boy.
He did the accent well, the Dutch accent, which he passed off as Southern.
But like we were talking, he kind of sounded like Elmer Fudd.
He kind of did. It was funny. Yeah, you called it. He sounds like Elmer Fudd. And even having a Dutch last name, I don't fully know what it's hard to pick out a Dutch accent.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's what Dutch people sound like. They sound like Colonel Tom Parker.
Maybe not.
They sound like Dutch people trying to pass off as Southerners, Southern Americaners.
Yeah, I guess there is that aspect to it for sure.
So let's get down to short and curlies. Dave, what do you think of the movie? What do you like about the movie?
I liked the movie. I thought the start of the film, the visual effects were a bit too much at first. A little bit of overload, as Bahz Luhrmann, can do in his movies.
What else has he done?
Yeah.
What's he overloading? What's he known for as overloading?
He's very visually stunning and kind of very, I don't know how to describe him. Just his movies, his visual style packs a lot of punch. Let's put it that way.
Good example, yeah, when he's leaving So there's a scene he wakes up like in a hospital bed. He's kind of in a daze. He runs through a casino. It's just him in a casino, and it's like roulette wheel spinning in his face, and things are blurring around him, and he's all sweaty and in a huff. And it's a very overwhelming shot where if you don't have any context to it, it can be a lot.
Yeah, just some of the transitions between scenes. Like there was a few montages of time progressing for Elvis, and I don't know, it kind of made it a bit more kitschy than I would have liked. But then I'd say like quarter of the way the movie, it kind of settles down. And you kind of just get locked into the story of how the Colonel found Elvis and their advancement of their careers together and all that. And once it kind of settled down, I really got into it. Always a big fan of Elvis. Didn't really know a lot about him, and so it was interesting to see his early days growing up poor. He grew up primarily in a black neighborhood, being discovered by the Colonel. His rise and clash with the culture at the time, and what the expectations were, and what kind of made him so big around the world. His time in the army, being sent to Germany, was a weird kind of twist as well, and just his return to America and all the uncertainty about whether he would still be loved and remembered, and where his career was going to go from there. And then the ultimate revival of his music career and the start of his pill addiction. Yeah, no, it's just a very enlightening movie.
Well, great sum up, by the way. I do want to say it was enlightening, but you summed it up pretty well there.
Yeah, no, so it was just interesting to see someone, the story behind the legend. We look at these characters and they're larger than life, but Elvis has a very human story. Just interesting to hear all that.
If I can do a little bit of interjection, I'm not the biggest of Elvis fans. Like, I've listened to a few songs,
Right.
but we weren't a big Elvis family, so I didn't know what to expect from the movie. When it first started off, it did take its time. It does have a bit of a long setup, but as the movie progresses, the way they set it up and the pauses, some of it is, I feel, long and almost filler-like, but by the time you get halfway to 3/4, once he goes to the military, comes back, and the addiction starts setting in, it moves pretty quick-paced, fast-paced. So even though it does feel long at the beginning, it takes its time. I do feel like it pays off. And you have this knowledge, so when it starts getting to the wild points of his career of addiction, he wants to go and tour, and Tom's saying, fuck you, you stay here. You're like, I get it, and I feel for you because
Right.
I've been on this experience. So I felt like there was a lot of delayed gratification in the movie. And I liked it more than I thought I would, mainly just because I'm not a big Elvis fan, so I didn't have high expectations. But I got away with it being, again, 2 hours, 39 minutes, not 40. They could have posted to make it even, but let's stick with odds. Odds are slimming. So they did it that way, and I think it paid off. I just want a dramatic pause.
I was going to say, wait for it.
Yeah, wait for it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I recently watched the Marilyn Monroe film on Netflix as well, and it takes place around the same era, and very much a similar story of entertainers at that time being manipulated and taken advantage of by their managers, and just kind of that was the industry back then. So seeing all that kind of stuff too, and just the extent to which Colonel kind of did exploit Elvis it's just pretty crazy to see that was just the norm back then, right?
So I don't have the exact numbers, but doing some research, normally managers will take about 10 to 15%. It looks like the Colonel was probably taking about 50% of Elvis's earnings.
Right.
So no matter how much money Elvis made, that's half of what he could have made. It's pretty wild.
Fair.
50% of earnings for signing someone to sing. It's a good gig.
Yeah.
When you can't sign them up for them other people to do it and take their money.
Yeah.
What did you think about the accuracy? There were some parts in the film.
We discussed that, yeah.
We've been diving into it. And the way they portrayed in the movie, again, I think it's well done telling it through Colonel Tom Parker. Okay, let's kind of dive into it. I think it was funny seeing, because the Colonel is like a villain. So I just got to see Tom Hanks as a villain in this movie.
Right.
And the more you dive into it, the more you say, wow, Elvis really did, they make him really represent, like being a part of, or not being a part of, but supporting the civil rights and wanting to bring the music and to entertain people. It's all he wanted to give. But when you dive into certain aspects, it is true he did have, he really was a giver. But certain things that disappointed me, what really was, is the fact that in the movie, him and B.B. King were really good friends, but they weren't in real life.
Yeah, that really disappointed me. I'd seen B.B. King live before, maybe a little over 10 years ago.
And you have just as much of a connection with him as Elvis does, is what you're saying.
Yeah, no, yeah, and I was really what I learned from the movie that they had been kind of buddies, and played music together, and smoked cigarettes together and hung out. I thought that was really cool, and to find that was not, very true, was disappointing.
But it made the movie interesting. So from a writer's standpoint, it's okay to add a bit of flair. We looked into. I like this about the Colonel, because he was a carny, and looking into his past, he was a carny back in the Netherlands as well.
Oh, yeah.
So not only are the Dutch known as sounding like Southern Americans, they're also known as carnies, which I guess is another Southern American thing.
Yeah.
Or is it Central American? Regardless, called himself the Snowman. And that was a real thing, because he made a twist on a showman, and he used his way of snowing people as like conning people or lying to people. And that was something that he actually did refer to. He even created his own Snowman's League of America. So that was a historical accuracy in the movie. So we got a negative one, we got a plus one. What else was negative or plus? What did they do right? What did they do wrong?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think they did very much wrong with the movie. Like, I think all these biopics are going to have their kind of inaccuracies or embellishments to kind of further the story and make it more compelling for the audience. But no, I think for 2 hours 39 minutes, this movie kind of sailed by, and I never got bored at any point. And I think if you're a fan of Elvis, this is for you. If you're curious about Elvis at all, definitely for you. And if you're a Bahz Luhrmann fan, I think you're going to enjoy this as well. So I think there's a lot of options here. Austin Butler does a fantastic job as Elvis, as we were saying. Even the kid they got to play young Elvis looks like he could be a young Austin Butler, who himself could be a Elvis.
Funny looking at like the cast afterwards, and you look at them all, and they all it was really well casted, and it's weird seeing them as themselves. You're like, wait a minute, aren't you supposed to be Elvis right now, Austin?
And not even a big cast either. Like, outside of Tom Hanks, and I mean, before this, no one really knew who Austin Butler was. But outside of those two, like, the cast is not very, not a big cast, not very recognizable. So
here's a negative, and it's on me. I didn't do my research on Austin Butler. What else has he done?
He hasn't done much. Like, this is his, at least for me, his first breakout role. Now he's got a part in the next Dune movie, in the sequel. So I mean, he's rolling now. I think he's really captivated the U.S. So
he's like Rob Lowe and Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves in Youngblood, which if you haven't checked out yet, check out our review of it. This is Austin Butler's Youngblood, and is not a revival. But yeah, it's just young. Yeah, whenever somebody starts off, it's their Youngblood.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
The most notable hockey movie,
yeah,
besides Slapshot
and
Goon
Mighty Ducks
and the Mighty Ducks. But other than those three hockey movies, Youngblood, it's right after. Was there anything in the movie that you watched and that you particularly weren't fond of? Because I know you are an Elvis fan. So was there anything, and you like Bahz Luhrmann, but is there anything that just kind of took you out of it?
Again, I think it was just some of the visual effects choices at the beginning that kind of sucked you out of the more intimate, personal experience and kind of made it a bit more showy. But I think, maybe that was also a decision made just due to reflect the styles at the time.
That's like when you say styles at the time.
Well, I think, theater and film were relatively new back then. And, music was even bigger deal, I would argue, back then, because it had been around and more available earlier. And, things were more showy and cinematic and kind of just more, I would say showy back then. And so maybe he was just trying to give that feeling visually. And that's why some of the transitions, were more... They just seemed a lot more computer graphics and, things like that, rather than practical effects, or kind of keeping things in a really steady pace,
I see what you mean. I'm grabbing you with it. But what I did really like, which threw me off but in a good way, was they would have the transitions where they threw a few clips of Elvis live, and they transitioned it between Austin Butler and Tom Hanks, and they would throw in Elvis. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was particularly well done. Part of me was like, I want to see more of those Elvis shots. But I think they did the perfect amount where they didn't overflood it, and they would do comparisons. And they would show the stage, Elvis on top, and then they would show Austin Butler up there and performing, and they had like the the design of it looked so authentic. The way they rolled the footing back and forth. There was times, even though it was comparing the modern film to when Elvis was doing it, it transitioned pretty seamlessly. So that's a good way to look at it, where they were very accurate with a lot of their visual aspects.
Yeah,
especially the costume design, the set design,
set production, all that stuff.
It makes me want to wear more jumpsuits.
No one's stopping you.
You know, that's a good point. I guess the only thing is financially and stylely.
We'll just start with one.
Listen, that's a good point. What was your favorite Elvis outfit?
Oh, I don't know that I have one.
I just particularly enjoy Fat Elvis in his white jumpsuit with blue flare.
Yeah, anything with a cape, I think, is great.
Yeah, he did make the cape look good on stage. Has anyone else pulled off a cape on stage? Maybe Liberace?
Yeah, maybe him. I don't know if
Batman.
The
The Dark Knight.
who are the ones with the tiger?
Siegfried and
Roy.
Roy.
Do they wear capes? I feel like they wear capes, no?
I think that's how the tiger got them. Particularly, they tried to run away like a cartoon, and he snagged the cape.
So maybe just don't wear capes around tigers.
Well, like in The Incredibles, heroes don't wear capes, and he gets, spoiler alert if you haven't seen that fucking 2000s movie, guy gets sucked into an airplane because he has a cape on. That's why heroes don't wear capes. But Elvis was a hero who wore a cape. Well, he also did karate.
Right. Some interesting YouTube videos out there of him doing karate if you want to be entertained.
There was no way of seriously putting that into the biopic, which would not be comical.
I think they should have done it with like the credits, just kind of cut to those scenes of him doing a bit of karate, fake karate.
Okay, Bahz, if you want to go back into like
director's cut.
Director's cut, include Elvis karate. So we have the timeline of Elvis, the music. How did you find that they put his music into? I thought they did a really good job of him performing, and his sound. He sounded amazing as Elvis.
And that was him.
It was. It's surprising to see the amount of artists. For example, was it Joaquin? Who did Johnny Cash?
Yeah, it was Joaquin.
It was Joaquin. Like the way they sing, it sounds so amazing. You really do get like you forget that they're not the actual artist.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know he recorded all those. Damn, he did a good job.
Did he? That's what I'm asking.
Oh, I'm saying yes. Sorry.
Oh, okay, yeah. I don't know, because I know some movies they definitely make it look like they're the ones singing, but then like they're just acting and they just have someone else doing it.
But you said
so
Austin Butler was doing it, right?
I don't think I said that.
We'll leave this mystery afoot.
We'll do some more research.
Regardless, he sounded great as him, though.
Yeah, no, I thought the usage of his songs and kind of hearing some of the background behind the songs in terms of like how he came to them or where he was at in his life story when he came out with those songs or what they were inspired by. I thought those were all really well done.
What was your one takeaway from the film? If you could have one takeaway.
I think it was similar to the Marilyn Monroe one. It's just like you hear names like Marilyn Monroe or Elvis. Elvis, you don't even... the title of the movie is just his first name, right? He's kind of just this god, but you don't really realize he's a human being with his own struggles like everyone else, lost his mom when he was younger and how that affected him and, just being a product of the time that he grew up and what was going on in the world, just seeing, his personal struggle with relationships, whether it be with his mother or his father or his manager or his wife, and his pill addictions and all that kind of stuff, and just kind of getting to know the person behind, that legend, I think it's interesting to see.
I didn't know much about him, and my big takeaway was as well about the struggle, and mainly about how Colonel Tom manipulated him, and a lot of his problems came from him wanting to go out and explore the world and do more things, and being, kind of trapped in a sense to America, and then whenever he had a problem, just give him the pills, sedate him, and they fed him into him, and it was for personal gain, and it did affect a lot of his relationships in his life, and goes to show you, no matter how good it is, you can be struggled, and people can use your own fame against you.
Yeah. No, it's pretty depressing to see whether, again, be Marilyn Monroe or Elvis, how the people around them who you think would be the ones concerned about them were the ones giving them these drugs and just kind of like pushing them on the stage because they wanted their money and they had their contracts and all this other kind of stuff. And it's just sad to see a human being kind of just reduced to, the art that they produce, and kind of having the human being behind that art being actively neglected by tons of people around them. So
I think with the box office ratings and the way of the portrayal, I think we can all say, though, leaves Elvis in better taste than what people thought of. Because I feel like the last thing we kind of knew of was him dying, eating a lot of peanut butter banana burgers. But now with this movie, I feel like it's kind of left him on a more positive note.
Yeah.
And really, really shoved down General Tom Parker.
Yeah.
Who I had no idea I never even heard that name before.
Neither did I. Yeah, I had no context for him. So actually, that whole aspect was what was interesting to me, like never hearing the Colonel's name, but seeing how much influence he had on Elvis becoming a celebrity and becoming a hit. So,
the Snowman.
Yeah.
That being said, Dave, I got a question for you. I want you to think. Close your eyes, but relax. Don't. Yeah, there we go. Shoulders down. Now you're in Australia, but it looks like Tennessee, and you're on a ranch. You're sitting in a Cadillac. What would you review the movie as? What's your rating out of 10?
I don't know why I need to be in Australia or in a Cadillac.
And I don't know. And you can open up your eyes now too, by the way.
Okay, that's good. Okay, yeah. I enjoyed this movie. I thought it was, if you like Elvis, like I said, if you like Bahz Luhrmann, I think you're gonna get something out of this movie. I give it a 7.5. I enjoyed it.
That's a good rating for it. I actually was gonna join you with that 7.5. It was a great movie, more than I expected. Just a bit long. Worth it in the long run, but as a movie overall, I was getting restless. I was getting tired. My attention span, I am a millennial, so my attention span is depleting. So 2:39 movie, 2 hour 39 to specify, takes it out of you.
Fair.
All in all, 14 out of 20. It's a pretty damn good bush. Definitely. That's a good front bush. There's been some decent trimming. There's been a nice amount of cleanliness. And people should look at it.
Yeah.
What else should we leave on? What's your last... If you could have one last word, let's say that the solar flare takes out the power grid and you will no longer have the ability to speak into a microphone to 3 people.
This is making...
What are you going to leave them with?
It's very dramatic.
It is, yeah. Well, it's Elvis. We're talking about the king of rock. Let's call you the king of this question. What are you going to leave the viewers?
I think
listeners
go check out Austin Butler. See if you think he's for real. I think this guy's got a long future ahead of him in film business, and I'm excited to see what he does next. And like you said, this is his young blood. So check it out.
I don't know why I wasn't expecting that. That was a great answer. Check out Austin Butler. Check out Elvis, and check out Youngblood.
Yep, and check us out on Spotify and Google Podcasts and iTunes.
Please do that. Like it. Follow, subscribe, please.